Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about Hinduism, which is one of the major religions of the Indian subcontinent. About 1 billion people today consider themselves to be Hindus. It is the oldest of the world religions, dating back to 1500 BC with the Aryan migration into the Indus River Valley. It's pretty complicated. It's got some really big ideas, but if you pay attention and take notes, you'll get through it just fine. So, Hinduism comes as a fusion of the Aryan worldview and the worldview of the people who lived in the Indus River Valley. So the Aryans come in with a warlike religion where the warrior gods ride on chariots through the sky and kill dragons with thunderbolts and give them special powers to defeat their enemies. This fades away and Hinduism emerges as a result of both these Aryan warlike aspects and the more peaceful aspects of the Indus River Valley civilization. In Hinduism, we see the remnants of the Aryan caste system and also the Aryan veneration for cattle. Remember, they were herders after all. But we also see in Hinduism certain aspects of the old Indus civilization. For example, they continue to consider ritual bathing to be very important. And they also continue to respect nonviolence as one of the highest religious virtues. Remember, there were no weapons at all in the Indus River Valley. The core beliefs of Hinduism are a little bit complicated, and we're going to have to go into a little bit of philosophical talk here. So just bear with me for a minute. First of all, the core principle of all of Hinduism is this idea of Brahman. They believe that the deepest aspect of reality at its most basic level, is an unchanging, eternal spiritual unity. Everything is one, and this one eternal, unchanging spiritual force is called Brahman. And they believe that all things in the world, you, your dog, your table, the computer you're looking at right now, are all deep down part of Brahman, sorry. But they believe that individual souls have been split off from Brahman. And they believe that these souls are kept from reuniting with Brahman, that is, the eternal spiritual unity of all existence, because they are filled with selfish desires. They believe that the goal of each individual's existence is to return to Brahman. And they call this return to Brahman MOKSHA, which means liberation. Until the individual soul returns to Brahman, it will continue to suffer. And so it's only by eliminating selfish desire and achieving moksha that anything can ever really be happy. And this true form of happiness is the dissolution of the individual into Brahman. That diagram might help you a little bit. So some other important beliefs. First of all, they believe that each ATMAN, each individual soul, can never die, but lives forever. And so even though you may die, your soul, your ATMAN, will be reborn into another body. And it will live over and over and over again until it reaches moksha, that is, it returns to Brahman. So you can see that picture there. It shows a single soul tracing its way through many lives as a human being. Now, karma. Karma is the belief that the actions of the individual in one life determine how it will live in the future. And so what this means is that if you live one life as a very selfless individual, you could be reborn closer to moksha. You could be one step closer towards liberation. But if you lead a selfish life, then you move away from moksha, and your soul moves further away from liberation. And so the basic idea is that by living many lives and striving for selflessness over and over again, your soul will eventually reach the point of liberation where it returns to Brahman. Yes, each life can be a step towards the ultimate goal of liberation from the cycle of birth, death, and suffering. How wonderful. Now, they believe that there are 3 different paths to moksha. And the first path that I want to talk about is called Bhakti, which stands for the path of ritual worship. That's what Bhakti means. And so the Hindus, even though they believe that ultimately all reality is this one unifying principle, Brahman, they also believe that there are many gods that human beings can worship. And they believe that each of these gods is a certain face of Brahman. And the 3 main gods of Hinduism that people worship are named Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And they believe that these 3 gods are responsible for creating the universe, preserving the universe, and then destroying certain aspects of the universe. So that is, Brahma creates the universe, Vishnu maintains the universe, and then Shiva destroys things, and ultimately destroys the whole universe. Which is then recreated again in an eternal cycle. Everything in Hinduism is about cycles. And so anyway, by worshiping these gods, and also many other gods, individuals hope that they can escape their own selfish desires. So you can pray to the gods for wisdom, you can pray to the gods for release, and through this prayer and through this devotion, you're forgetting about yourself and putting your faith in something higher than yourself. And this forgetting of yourself helps lead you away from selfishness and towards moksha. That is the path of bhakti. You rely on the blessings of the gods to move up the ladder of karma. Another path to moksha is known as yoga. And yoga is not just stretching and breathing like, you guys might have done. It's much more complicated than that. In yoga, the individual seeks to attain moksha through his or her own individual efforts. And so what this means is, rather than worshiping a god and hoping that this worship and the god will help you to attain moksha, you decide you're going to do it all yourself. And you do this by eliminating all selfish desire. And there are a couple different ways that yogis, that is, people who worship yoga, try to do this. The first thing is meditation. And in meditation, the yogi seeks to focus his mind and eliminate all thought. And by eliminating all thought, you eliminate all thoughts of yourself, and thus you eliminate selfishness. And by chanting and by changing the poses of your body, you can help to still your mind and thus escape selfish desire. Another thing that lots of yogis do is called asceticism. And this is where you give up earthly pleasures. You give up food, you give up your family, you give up wealth, you give up any status. And by giving up all these things, you're escaping from your desires. They think that when you have a bunch of stuff that you love, then you get attached to it and you want more and more and more, and you become greedy and selfish. But if you give away everything, then you don't have anything to hold on to, and you no longer have any selfish desire. That is why they give up all this stuff. And that's why most yogis are really skinny, is they go on fasts for a long time because they think that even enjoying food leads to selfishness. And finally, they also believe in ahimsa, which is a very important Hindu principle, which teaches that you should do no harm to any living thing. All living things are aspects of Brahma, right? And so because of this, all living things deserve respect. And so you must live your life without harming anything else that is alive. This leads lots of yogis to become vegetarians. They don't eat very frequently, and when they do, they only eat non-living things, non-animal things, trying to do the least amount of violence as possible. And so to sum it up, yoga is, through the practice of yoga, the individual frees his mind from selfish desires and prepares himself for moksha. And the third path to moksha is known as dharma. And dharma basically means doing your duty. And your duty will depend on where you live inside the Hindu caste system, which we talked about last time. And remember, the caste system is basically the idea that people are born into different social roles, and they have to perform those particular roles as their job in life. And so you've got the peasants on the bottom, the craftsmen and the warriors in the middle, and the priests at the very top. And remember, they're called the Brahmins. And the idea is that whenever you're born into a particular caste, if you do your job very well, then you can move up one step of the ladder. And so the idea is, so if you're a peasant and you do your job well and you grow lots of food and give it away to your master and take care of your kids, maybe you'll be reborn as a warrior. And then as a warrior in your next life, if you're really courageous and defend your country, then when you die, you will be reborn again as a Brahmin. And then as a Brahmin, if you do a good job, you have the chance to attain moksha and escape forever the cycle of reincarnation. So each life is like a step up towards moksha. But there's a good question to ask here, and that is, we should ask how the idea of dharma and the idea of the caste system help to reinforce social stratification. Every society has social stratification, as we've looked at, as we've seen in Mesopotamia and Egypt. But how is it working here, and how is social stratification and religion mixed up? How are they combined in Indian culture? How is this different from Mesopotamia and Egypt? Things that are worth thinking about. Anyway, so the idea is, for this whole picture, there are three different ways to attain moksha. There's worship, known as bhakti. There's yoga, where you seek to do it all by yourself through meditation. And then there's dharma, where you slowly, through many lives, work your way up towards moksha. But in reality, most Hindus combine these three paths and do a little bit of both, or a little bit of all three. They'll worship a god, but they'll also meditate, but they'll also do their duty within the caste system. But so by doing some combination of these three things, you can move yourself towards the ultimate goal, which is escape from existence as a human being and return to Brahman, aka moksha. I wanted to talk about a couple sacred texts. So most religions have a sacred text, but Hinduism has hundreds of sacred texts. And so I just wanted to talk about a couple real quick. The first is the Rig Veda, which we have already talked about a little bit with the Aryans. This was the earliest Hindu holy text, and it was brought by the Aryans. And this is a collection of poems and ritual hymns that the Aryans believe have special magical powers. By saying the hymns in just the right way, an individual can attain the blessing of a god, but this usually means you also have to give the god something in the form of a ritual sacrifice. So this is going back towards bhakti more than anything else. You're worshiping the gods and you're hoping for divine blessings. The Upanishads were written later, over the course of about 500 years, and they were written by Hindu priests, aka Brahman. And these deal mostly with philosophy and yoga, and they deal with how does the individual gain the wisdom that they need to reach moksha. They're very philosophical and interesting. And last of all, there's the Bhagavad Gita, which developed slowly over time, but focuses mainly on dharma. And it tells the story of a young prince who has to learn to do his duty rather than to follow his personal desires. And through following his duty, he improves his spot in the cycle of karma. So that's all we've got for Hinduism. I hope this didn't, blow you away too badly. We'll talk about it in class a lot tomorrow, so don't worry too much. Good night.